Hi there, folks. Simon here. This is Tack University, a series that covers some tips and tricks and maybe just some things that I've learned along the way that I think may help bring your game to a higher level. Today, we're going to be talking about walls, specifically how to effectively use walls in your games, both offensively and defensively. And if you're new to Tack, you may be thinking, how can you use a wall offensively? We'll jump into that in a bit. First, let's jump into the ways that we see walls used most often by newer players and often by experienced players as well. Sometimes it's the only thing you can do is a defensive wall. So in this case, Black has gotten themselves into a bit of a predicament here, trying to focus on their own line, and White is making this threat. So instead of being risky here, Black is going to drop a wall to block off this threat. Then White says, okay, I'll go around the wall and we'll build up here, and Black drops yet another wall. And these two walls effectively cut off all of White's threat here. This is an example of how many people use walls, and it's not wrong. I want to stress that it is not a wrong way to use a wall, but it is the most basic of ways to use a wall. And cutting off your enemy's threats is a great tactic that is used in many games with a wall. However, there are many ways that players can use walls to be more offensive and maybe even do two things at once. Using walls effectively can take a good player and make them into a great player. So let's take a look at what some of these examples are in terms of great wall usage. So let's look at this game right here. So we see in this turn, White has placed their capstone, and this is a pretty good capstone placement, I'm not going to lie, even though it doesn't follow all of the guidelines laid out in the capstones video in Tack University. This is a really good one. And so we see Black trying to build this vertical threat and comes over and captures. Well, White wants to use that capstone to capture on top of that stack and release that captive and have that strong capstone piece. Black plays this move here. Now, this move gets that stack away from the capstone of White, isolates White's capstone a bit, but creates some liabilities here. One of the ways to effectively use a wall offensively is to place it next to a stack where you can liberate some of your captives. So in this case, we've got a White captive here, a White captive here, and two White captives here. White wants to be able to interrupt this horizontal threat that Black is building and the vertical threat that they're building and liberate some of these captives. So let's take a look here. What White does is drops a wall. All right, solid wall placement, able to capture up here. This flat stack isn't really going anywhere. There's really nowhere for it to go. It could go here, then get captured by the capstone. It could go here, get captured by this flat. It could go here, get captured by this flat, and it just wouldn't work out too well. So this stack is basically trapped. And Black plays somewhere else down below. White comes up and makes that capture. Now, in this point of the game, White is able to leave behind maybe a White flat here and capture onto this piece, go for some captive liberation, right? Try to make a solid play offensively with this wall, being able to spread out stacks, capture more pieces, liberate more flats, and maybe eventually build into a drawbridge, which again, a drawbridge is when you take a wall stack and spread it out to create a road. That is in the terminology video of Tack University, if you were curious. And so in this case, we've got this stack now captured by this wall. Black's gonna have to do something. They're gonna start building along, build this anchor point. White is gonna go ahead and capture onto this spot. This is a pretty strong position here, able to build up and able to capture with this wall. It's a very strong stack, even though it's a wall stack, still very strong offensively. So now we see some building for Black, trying to go for this, build around, kind of cut off White's avenues of attacking this threat. But White's just going to go ahead and build this anchor point. Now it's got this vertical and horizontal road threat all anchored up. ready to go with this wall stack, with the capstone, with these flats here and these flats here. And black is going to keep building along. Down here, building for that horizontal threat. White building for their own horizontal threat here. And so this wall stack stays static. At this point in the game, that stack is pretty powerful, and white doesn't need to spread it out and get rid of it at this point. So it's staying there as this big, powerful piece, sort of guarding this area here and this area here for white, able to capture onto those places and stop black from interrupting any sort of threat that white builds. So if we continue on in the game here, we see white going over with the capstone, kind of liberating that, able to come up and then make a threat by moving this wall stack around in a drawbridge maneuver. However, black drops a wall here, ready to come up and capture onto this spot, interrupting that threat. Now white decides, all right, I'll build down here and go for a vertical threat. Because with this wall stack, they can go for a drawbridge. And so white's going to keep building down, going for that tag threat. Black builds down below, cutting that off. White builds to the side. Black builds up top. Now, black building up top here, probably not the best move. They could have built down here, but they built up to be able to capture over and interrupt this, or capture down and interrupt. And so white's going to keep building. They make this tag threat. Now, this is a drawbridge tag threat, being able to move to the side of the left or to the right to create that threat. So black comes across with this flat. So white just drops another flat, maintains that position. And this wall is so integral to this threat because it can't be stopped by any sort of capture right there. And a wall won't stop it because there are two options that white's wall has to move to the side or this side to open up that threat. So black's going to be forced to move that wall here, and white says, all right, smash it with that capstone coming across. Now this is basically set. There's nothing that black can do here except delay this win by a few moves, because this is a Tinyue pattern here. And so able to use this wall, this very powerful wall stack, to secure the win. So let's see how this game plays out. We see black moving over, white comes down with that capstone, black comes across, white comes back up with the capstone, black comes up, white comes back down with the capstone, and now we see this move being made, and then white will be able to take that wall stack and spread it up. Let's look at that again. It's 4e4, so leaving that bottom white flat, dropping a white flat here, and then dropping the top three pieces here. Perfect. After this move here, there's nothing that black can do to stop this, not even moving this across, because it's also a horizontal tag threat coming from F2 all the way over here to A4. Even if this weren't here, this would still be Tinyue for white, and black would be able to take this. It's a very strong position, and it's all because of this strong wall stack that came about back here at, what move was that? It came out in move 12, captured up, captured over, and stayed there on move 14 all the way until move 28. That was its original position. This strong linchpin wall stack was the key to the whole victory that white had here. The capstone played a big part for sure, but this wall stack was absolutely key. So this was a pretty short game, only 29 moves, able to make that Tinyue happen and secure that victory using this wall stack. But let's take a look at a bit more complicated game. So let's jump ahead to where the first wall is placed. So here we are, black is building along for this threat, white's building along for this threat, and white makes this capture down. Black says, all right, I want that stack. Drops a wall, ready to come down and capture it. White moves that across and makes this tag threat here, but also keeps that stack with those captives away from this wall. So black's going to move that wall down, ready to take that stack and release those captives. But white makes a play, up in this direction, trying to make for that threat in the vertical direction. So black's going to have to respond to those, maybe build along for their own threat here. And so black makes a couple other plays. Now white makes this horizontal now white makes this horizontal road threat. And black decides this is the time to come over and capture this. Now, this wall stack is here, and it's very strong. So this is something that black is going to want to hold on to for a while and keep that until it's useful, or until maybe a positive flat count differential move is needed. In the later game, if it comes down to flats, again, positive flat count differential is a very, very excellent concept, and you should check out that video on TAC University if you haven't seen it already. But this is a strong position here. It's against the edge for sure, but it is able to connect to this anchor point and making connections to black's pieces over here. So it's in a good spot. So now we see some other moves. White making their threat in the vertical direction. Black's going to come over with that capstone. White's going to place here. Black comes up. What would I do in this situation? I would come across maybe, make that play. Black's going to come down with that capstone stack. Not able to capture anything, but able to drop that flat along the way and interrupt this road threat that white was trying to build. Now comes across with this white flat. Black comes across, captures it with this capstone. Now, this is where things get interesting, because this play right here is where you think, okay, what would I do in this situation? Would I just build up here for a threat of a road on d6? Because that makes a lot of sense. It would just automatically give you pressure. However, it might be hard to see, but black does have a Tinue option here. So if white were to play here, and black takes this move, for example, that's going to be Tinue. So if white captures down, black captures up. If white captures over, black places here. And then that makes this line here ready to be placed there, or take this stack and move it across. So let's say that white makes this one, black places here, then white drops a wall here, black just takes this across for the road. So that is not, however, what white did in this place. White placed a wall here blocking this Tinue threat. So first of all, good eyes being able to spot that. Secondly, using that wall to stop this super offensive, super strong move that you knew had to be coming right there. So able to drop that wall. Black brings that capstone over. Let's take a look at the next time some walls are used. Let's skip ahead. So we'll move around. Black's capstone is right next to this wall now. It's been there for a while. Now, let's see. Okay, here we go. So we see some capture placement here. So big stacks. So black comes up with this capstone, drops a piece off, captures that stack. White comes across, captures it. Black comes down, captures it. Now this is where you got to have a wall. You got to drop a wall here to stop black from making these super strong moves, potentially Tinue moves, right? So white drops a wall here. Okay, black decides to make a play going up in this direction. White drops another wall. This is another way that you can use walls, is you can block in capstone stacks and sort of trap them, especially really tall stacks like this one. So this has a lot of flats in it, a lot of captives for white, but also a lot of flats that black can use offensively. And so white doesn't want that to happen, so white is blocking this capstone away from the rest of the board, keeping it basically trapped and making it useless for the rest of the game. So that's what white's attempting to do here. Black able to keep playing in this vertical direction, trying to make this tack threat up here, basically ignoring that their capstone is being trapped and forcing white to respond up there. So white does respond, makes a couple moves. Black makes some moves, trying to continue on with that tack threat. Black going ahead, going for this horizontal attack threat now. This is where white decides to make this throw attempt. Now, this throw isn't normal, and it wouldn't do too much. However, what it does do is it frees up this space here, even though it basically guarantees a recapture on this spot. It frees up that space, and now white can drop a wall to capture onto this stack. And so this wall is doing two things. It's helping trap this capstone, but it's also ready to capture onto this stack. And now this stack is a little juicier now that it has two white captives in it. And so that was the point of that throw, being able to toss that over and capture up to make that stack a little juicier, a little bit more worthwhile to grab with a wall. So black tries to get away from that, moves those top four pieces up to get away from that wall so the wall can't free any captives. The wall follows a little bit, ready to come up and capture there. Black makes that self-capture right here, able to come across and maybe make some threats in this horizontal direction or vertical direction at the same time. Now this is where things get pretty interesting. Black makes this capture across, ready to make a attack threat by capturing over with b5. White comes up, captures, does what we all expect would happen. Capture up, don't let that stack do anything. Now this is where the good stuff happens. That big wall stack that we saw down here finally makes its move. So let's take a look at that again. So we've got two black flats, and then two white flats, and then the wall. And so this comes up, dropping 1, 1, 1, and then a white and the wall up on top. So this is pretty huge. It's a great position here. White wants to break this up, wants to maybe make their own tack threat again. And so that's what they go for. They make their own tack threat. Being able to place here would be a tack threat. Black, all right, I'll place here. I've got these extra pieces here that were left behind by that traveling wall stack, able to secure this area. So white makes this capture down below. Black tosses that. White makes this capture onto this piece, which is a pretty solid move. Doesn't have to worry about being recaptured. It would win a capture war here. But black ignores it. And the reason why black ignores it is because he's got these pieces that were left behind, again, by that traveling wall stack. And so even this two-stack piece can't come in and completely interrupt this road. So white moves away from that, capturing out of this piece, trying to open up a spot to drop a wall here so they can stop the inevitable win and the inevitable Tinue that black is building towards. Black doesn't give them that chance, just drops another flat there. And so white comes over with that stack. We see, boom, flat capture. Comes over, flat capture. Comes over, flat capture. And now this is where there's nothing to do here. It's been Tinue in a sequence for a while. White comes over with this move. Black comes up. Now this is where you could see either a drawbridge to the right to make that road, or you could see a spread out to the right here. White just plays a flat knowing that there's nothing they can do to stop it, and black makes that spread. Instead of using a drawbridge, either one, totally fine. Could have decided to go like this. And that also would have been a road. And so that wall was huge. That was the absolute key move to everything. That started this whole sequence, being able to capture up with that wall. White did a good job trapping this capstone, trying to capture out of that stack here a little earlier, but wasn't able to actually make it happen. So excellent play by both players in this, and excellent use of walls. So you can see here that walls aren't just used for blocking these simple threats. They're not just used to place in front of somebody's flat stones to keep them from making that road. They're used as these offensive linchpins to really, really trap in your players and get this offensive edge to make these big road threats and to keep your opponent from capturing these flats and keeping them underneath their own walls or their own capstone. They are huge, influential pieces that can be used in a bunch of different ways, and using a wall correctly really differentiates the good players from the great players. You'll look at games from the top players who right now are Fwib and No Hat Coder, Abyss, and a few other players. They all use walls very effectively, and they use them very offensively a lot of the time. Especially in games where there's Comey, Pluto the Brave, who is another top player right now, uses walls very effectively as black because he has that flat count advantage, able to drop walls a little bit more freely. Now, the walls do punish you for not having a flat count move because dropping a wall is almost like a -1 flat count move, but they can really, really help you in the long run if you do place them in good positions. Like we saw in this one, the wall being dropped in the first place, right here next to this stack, able to liberate these captives and make these solid moves. Coming up, liberating a captive here, and then able to capture this big stack here. And these are what makes these wall moves excellent, and these type of moves really help you make these positive flat count differential moves, these really, really hard to respond to threats, great Tinue patterns. There are a lot of really strong moves that involve walls. That is all for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in to the next video in this TAC University series, and as always, be sure to check out the description of this video for all the TAC resources like the TAC subreddit, and especially the TAC Discord server, which is the community hub where you will find all sorts of people to play with, discuss all things TAC, and even play asynchronous or correspondence games right there in the Discord server without using any additional programs. It's really fun, really easy, and a good way to get better at TAC without having a time limit or having to carve out a big block of time to play a whole game at once on playtac.com. Again, all the resources are there, playtac.com, the subreddit, which has TAC Tinue puzzles every weekday, how to play videos, and all that jazz. Be sure to check out all those links, and until next time, have a great day and happy tacking.